Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and the science of the things that we are putting on our feet. Today is a unique episode because it is only myself today. This is David, for those that are listening. And today the topic will be shoe rotations and how to build them. So when we take a look at a shoe rotation and what that is, it's essentially in the name, but it is a rotation of shoes that we put on our feet. We always say that shoes are tools and that they can be used for different tasks. And so when we break up a shoe rotation, we can set them up for however we want to use these tools. And going forward with that, how many shoes go into a rotation? What are the purpose of each shoes? There's just so much out there now that it's very hard from the consumer standpoint to pick the shoes, let alone have multiple and know what to do with each one of them. And so I wanted to break that down a little bit today and really go through what shoe rotations could look like, both in the road running and in the trail running sphere. Mostly in the road running, I'm not on the trails as much, but we will go through it. I did take the time to write down a couple of things here on a whiteboard, and we will start going through it. So for road running, I broke it down into 2, 3, and 4 plus as far as shoe rotations go. And when we are taking a look at a shoe rotation for only 2 shoes that you get to choose from, essentially broke it down into one shoe that's going to be your workhorse shoe. It's going to be your daily running, easy running, potentially long run shoe as well. And then one performance shoe, essentially. And that performance shoe doesn't necessarily have to be a super shoe that we're seeing, but just something that you can turn over a little bit, you feel comfortable running a little bit faster in, and essentially that shoe would most likely be your racing shoe as well, because you would have the difference between your primary training shoe and then your go fast shoe. And so some examples for that, when we take a look at training shoes, one that comes to mind frequently for myself is the Saucony Ride 16. Neutral platform, not a whole lot of bells and whistles, simple, gets the job done. It's a workhorse shoe. It's one of my favorite shoes of the year so far. It's kind of like the old reliable that I can continue just logging miles in. And so usually with that daily running workhorse mileage shoe, I'm not as concerned about weight per se. Another shoe that I've been really digging is the Hoka Stinson 7. And this is a shoe that has some appeal in a 2-shoe rotation as well, because even though it's on the heavier side, this could be an easy day shoe. It can be a long run shoe. It can be a little bit of a trail running shoe as well. So it kind of checks all of those boxes. And when we look at that second shoe on the rotation, that can be something that can go a little bit quicker that you're comfortable with. Now, like I said, it doesn't have to be a super shoe. It can be what a lot of people call a training companion, or a shoe that accompanies a performance or racing shoe. And so some of those shoes that could be listed here, I'm just looking around, is a shoe like the Hoka Mach X. Lightweight, it's plated, it's a hybrid midsole between Pebax and EVA. And just a nice ride that is lightweight. It's responsive enough to get the job done for most things. It'll check most of your boxes. Another shoe that fits in that category pretty well would be the Adidas Boston 12. You can do daily training miles in it. You can do long runs. You can pick up the pace a little bit. And you can pretty much rely on it for almost any racing distance. Now, would I choose it for a 5K or 10K? No, I wouldn't. But in a 2-shoe rotation, if you just want something a little bit more snappy and lively, and you aren't as concerned about time or what is out there in the world for like a super shoe or a racing specific shoe, this is a shoe that can check those boxes. So essentially having one shoe that's for easy running, comfortable running, and then another shoe that helps you pick up the pace a little bit. And that can also be flip-flopped. So with some of these training companion shoes, you can also use them as a daily training option. So a shoe like the Boston 12 has plenty of durability to function as a daily trainer. And for those that are comfortable with that and like a little bit of a more forward, slightly aggressive ride, a little bit more bounce to the forefoot, this could easily be a daily trainer for somebody. And that can also be the case for a shoe like the Hoka Mach X. Another shoe that has a lot of versatility to it that you can do daily miles in. You could do speedy miles in. Is a shoe like the Topo Cyclone 2. That could be another option in that versatile Swiss Army knife type category. So for those that like a shoe that can do a little bit of everything and they want to use a shoe that is a training companion as their primary daily trainer, that is an option too. And so that's where shoes like I just listed, shoes like the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3, those types of shoes really shine in that category. And then using that other shoe being your racing shoe. And so just a couple of quick examples of things that are out there. I'm sure everybody knows the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 3. We've got shoes like the Saucony Endorphin Elite, shoes like the On Cloudboom Echo 3. And if you're not into the longer distances and you like something a little bit shorter, shoes like the Adidas Takumi Sen 9. So in a 2-shoe lineup, you could actually have a couple variances in how you design that rotation. It's crazy when you look at it and it's like, okay, so you have to only have one and you only have to have two. When you add one more shoe to that rotation, that does drastically change your options. And so when we take a look at a 3-shoe rotation, that is usually when I start to break it up. For me personally, I will look at my daily running shoe. That's going to be, again, that workhorse for me, the Ride 16, the Stinson 7, the Topo Cyclone 3 was another great daily training offering. And then I would look, if I only had 2 other shoes, I would break it up in one of 2 ways. One would be the daily running shoe as the 1 spot. The 2 spot would be the training companion, so the Boston 12, the Cyclone 2, the Mach X, any kind of lightweight performance-esque type shoe, but not the shoe that I'm going to race in, and then ultimately my racing shoe. And that racing shoe would probably accompany a multitude of distances. So something like the Vaporfly would probably be a pretty nice option for that, or the Cloudboom Echo 3. The other way of doing that is having a training companion or a lightweight-ish trainer as the option number 1, and then option number 2 being a go fast shoe for shorter distances. So we're talking, let's say 10 to 15K and down, and then we have like our half marathon up go fast shoes. And so you can have whatever it is that you like to have as your training shoe. And then for me, like the shorter distance shoes would be something that I'm using on the track or shorter interval days on the road. That would look like something like the Adidas Takumi Sen 9, the Topo Cyclone 2, and anything that's kind of shorter at New Balance, Fuel Cell, SC Pacer. That's another really solid option for that. And then my third option being that longer distance racing shoe. And so that again would be like the Vaporfly, Cloudboom Echo 3, Endorphin Elite, and just choosing between those two, because some of those shoes for those longer distances I don't necessarily like as much for the shorter distances. The Cloudboom Echo 3 and Vaporfly 3 are probably the more versatile of the bunch, where I feel like I can run 5K, 10K, and also run marathon, half marathon. Whereas the Endorphin Elite, for me personally, is more specifically half marathon up. So really taking a look at the use that you want to use the shoes for, and then divvying up the uses accordingly. Another potential option, if we're not looking at performance or going as fast as we can in certain distances, is having, let's say, a daily running shoe, that normal trainer that just gets the job done, having a trail running shoe, especially if you run in a lot of varied terrain and you want to really get out there and you want to just have something a little bit more sturdy on your foot. And then just having something that's a lightweight trainer as the next option, or kind of your speedy training companion type shoe that was similar to that 2-shoe rotation in the beginning. So the couple of different ways to play with 3-shoe rotations. This is assuming that you're not running cross country or track meets as well. If you are doing cross country and track, then normally I would probably say have your daily trainer. You could even do workouts in your daily trainer. I did that for a long time, but you can have a daily trainer, a workout shoe, race shoe, and just go from there. So it would basically be your daily training, some kind of a training companion or long distance racing flat. The water is very muddy now. And then having a pair of spikes or flats to go with what you're racing in. So that would be the 3-shoe option for that. Going into the 4+ options. Now, this is kind of a fun one because I'm fortunate being with Doctors of Running that we do get to test so many shoes. So acknowledging that there are more options that we have readily available, and looking at it, my normal rotation, give or take, is about 4 to 5 shoes. And what that would look like is one as my daily workhorse trainer. So that's the majority of our testing. That's the majority of my miles, just easy running. And that would be my shoes like the Ride 16, the Topo Phantom 3, the Hoka Stinson 7, those kinds of shoes where I'm just getting miles in. And so that's number one. That's got to be there. And then I like to have, being on the track once a week or doing shorter intervals, I like to have something a little bit snappier, moderate stack height or lower to the ground. For me, the Topo Cyclone 2 and the Adidas Takumi Sen 9 were great for that. Those are two of my just workout, shoes that I use all of the time for that purpose. Same with the New Balance SE Pacer. Then having a long distance tempo shoe, and that would be like the Boston 12 or just something that's a little bit, even the Asics Super Blast could probably fall into that category. Really any training companion out there, Hoka Mach X, I've done 10+ mile tempos in that shoe. So I usually have like the long tempo and kind of lightweight trainer, long run shoe. They all kind of blend together. So that would be like my number 3. And then the other option would be ultimately my racing shoe. And so I try to save miles off of my racing shoes. I try not to use them too often. With that said, I'll use them for races. And then as we get closer to races, I'll start using them for that intended purpose. So if I have a workout that's pretty close to race pace or what we're expecting to feel, then I may put them on. And so that it just varies by the distance. But usually these days I'm running more longer road races. So I will use it for that purpose. Now, if we don't care about having the short and the long distance shoes separated, another way we can divvy this up, and we did this a little bit with the 3 shoe rotation, is you could just add a trail shoe option or something that has a little bit more versatility for you. And so you can have, let's say, your normal daily training shoe that can be a moderate stack height, just get the work done, type of shoe. And then you can have a recovery day shoe if you're really feeling beat up and you want, let's say, a rockered profile and something to just kind of give you a little bit of help as you're going through. That's another option for a lot of people that they like, where they don't like it every day, but it's something they can reach for when they are feeling that way. Then having a trail shoe option, something that is a little bit more sturdy that you can take out into varying terrain and know that you can trust it for those options. And then just having something that's kind of a fun shoe. And so that can look like anything. That can be a racing flat, that can be a lightweight training companion, that can whatever makes you excited and have some fun. So those would be kind of the 4 shoe options going down the line, looking at what that would essentially be on that rotation. And so taking a look now at trail running, I don't go on the trails quite as much, but we're going to go down a very similar pathway here. And looking at a 2 shoe rotation on the trails, it would be very similar to the road running component, and it would be the shoe that I like to do my daily miles in, just something that's reliable and gets the job done. One shoe that comes to mind for me is the Brooks Cascadia 17. I joke, I say it's boring in the best way. It has a relatively natural transition. It feels pretty stable underfoot. I can take it pretty much wherever I want to take it. Is it a little bit heavier? Not as responsive as some of the other shoes out there, sure, but it gets the job done, and it's something that you can just keep running in over and over and over again and beat it into the ground. So that would be the daily training option for the trails if you're pretty exclusive to the trail area. Then the other option would be essentially the fun shoe, and that would be whether or not you're competing or pushing the pace or trying to run whether it's 25Ks, 10K trail, 50K trail, 100K trail, you kind of pick your distance of what you're trying to accomplish and then get a shoe that fits that profile for what you need. And so some of the shoes that could fall into that category when we look at that I had to grab it. So when we take a look at 25K down, and granted, this is relative. If you are used to running in these types of shoes and you want to go farther, you can go farther. No one's stopping you. But traditionally, when I think 25K down, I think of shoes like the Hoka Torrent. I don't have one right next to me, but Hoka Tecton X. This is the second version of that shoe. If I'm thinking about going longer, we've got shoes like the Nike Ultrafly now and the Saucony Endorphin Edge. So a little bit more of newer generation options, one having Zoom X, one having Power Run PB, both having carbon plates. This one has a Vibram outsole, the Nike Ultrafly, and then Power Track on the Endorphin Edge. So that would essentially be the 2-shoe rotation for trail running. When we take a look at a 3-shoe rotation, I think it still parallels the road running scene a little bit. You have your Old Reliable at number 1. The shoe that you're just going to log a lot of miles in. You can be going on a 3-mile trail run. You could be going on a 20-mile trail run. If it's just easy logging miles, that's your shoe. Then I think where we expand from there is having those fun options become a short and a long distance. That's one way to break it up. Another one is going by instances. So you can have, or terrain, you can have your more runnable trail option. And then you can have your technical terrain option. That would be something where it's like, okay, I have my daily. This is like if things really are bad and I'm running through a lot of rocks and boulders and really needing to watch myself, a secure shoe, and then kind of having a more fun, nimble, more runnable trail type running shoe. The other option when looking at trail running is setting it up by distances. So you can have the daily training shoe, you can have a Speedy 25K and then a Speedy Ultra. That is similar to what I said earlier, but that essentially is choosing a lane for each shoe, having a purpose for it, and then moving into it. Another one looking at usage is actually having the option for a waterproof upper or shoes that need gaiters or things like that you have attachments for. So if you're doing a lot of creek crossings, you're running in an area that has a lot of rain and you're concerned about your feet getting very damp and wet, you can use a waterproof shoe as well and put that in there. And so you can have, let's say, a Gore-Tex upper trail shoe in there that works for your mechanics. Another way of doing it too is having that all-terrain option. So you can have a all-terrain shoe like the Stinson 7, or a shoe that just runs okay on the road that kind of passes. I think the Ultrafly also does really well on the road. But having that shoe that you can, if you know you're going to be going on and off of roads and trails pretty frequently, that is something that you can also incorporate. So having an all-terrain shoe, trail-specific shoe, and then a race and or condition-specific shoe. So a lot of different ways to build a shoe rotation. When we take a look at 4 shoes or more, sky is kind of the limit. You know, you can just kind of have some fun there. And so having an all-terrain shoe, a weather-dependent shoe, a performance shoe, and then potentially a road running shoe, because most people have a road shoe in their lineup as well, because not all of their miles are going to be on trails. So that's taking a look at rotations and having a road option and then a trail option. When we look at rotations as a whole, I don't have any set rule. I think it's just good to have some variability in what you're putting on your feet and having the body adapt to a couple of different stimuli. If it's the same type of stimuli over and over and over again, the chance for repetitive stress injuries can go up. And so that's something to look out for. And it's one of the things that we have seen with having a shoe rotation that can help change the stresses on the body and potentially decrease some injury risk. So not that everyone has to have this 3 to 4 shoe or 4+ shoe rotation, but it is good to have a couple of different shoes in the arsenal to use for different activities or different races that you have planned. And so another thing that I would like to bring up too is I've been speaking a lot about racing and shoe rotations in perspective to performance, but this can also be a rotation for leisurely and recreational activity as well. So if you have a trail shoe or a road walking shoe that you like, there can definitely be room in those rotations as well for something that you just feel comfortable lounging and moving around in. For a lot of people, they have an everyday shoe that they just kind of walk in, run in, go to work in, and that's totally fine. And so just kind of finding the lane that you want the shoe to fit in and then just using it for the purposes that you allocate it for. And that will not only help with prolonging the life of some of the shoes, but it might also help with keeping injury risk down in the long run. So we would love to hear what everybody thinks about shoe rotations, where they feel they fall in shoe rotations. How many shoes do you have in your rotation? I should have said that at the beginning of the episode, but that will be our subjective for today is how many shoes do you have in your rotation? What are the shoes in your rotation? And what are things you look for when developing your shoe rotation? All right. Have a good evening, y'all.